California's most recent emission regulation.
California is toughening its auto emission standards.
California could announce the ban on the sale of all gas-powered cars.
That license plate doesn't belong to you.
California
is cracking down on certain electric bicycles.
We all know this. If there's a regulation making it harder to build or modify or play with cool cars, it probably came from California. I've been living here for over 7 years, and sometimes it just makes me want to... I know what you're thinking. I'm crazy. Eating too much fluoride. Why not get out of California? Well, because despite it all, I absolutely love it here. Gas prices are insane, but I live 10 minutes from one of the best driving roads in the country. My 1988 K5 Blazer has to pass a smog test every 2 years, but there are multiple massive state-run off-road parks within a 2-hour drive. And I'm forced to see more Cybertrucks than anyone should have to on any given day, but they share the road with things like a '64 Impala lowrider. The culture is incredible, and rust is hypothetical. But still, it's heaven and hell out here, especially after California announced a ban on new internal combustion cars starting in 2035. How did we go from the birthplace of hot rodding and drag racing to a regulatory state making rules for the rest of America? How did a place so obsessed with cars that Ferrari named an icon after it become a boogeyman? And where is this fight really headed? Let me give you the full story of the epic, decades-long war between California and car enthusiasts. A long time ago, the universe big banged into existence. Then, the Earth cooled, dinosaurs happened, they turned into oil, and the car was invented. The first factory-produced car to be delivered in Southern California made it west in 1899, when the population of Los Angeles was a scant 100,000 people. By the early 1920s, it was over 1 million, meaning the timeline of LA's development as a city matched that of the car itself, which is one of the reasons they became so inextricably linked over the rest of the 20th century. Next thing you know, cars were everywhere, and they were also being raced everywhere. California had racetracks as early as 1910. The Los Angeles Motor Dome had epically dangerous banked wooden corners, and by 1925, the Legion Ascot Speedway, Culver City Speedway, and Beverly Hills Speedway had all popped up within 15 miles of each other. But even with all these purpose-built facilities, people were still taking their freshly built toys out to the canyons and city streets in a craze that led to hot rodding. The 1920s and 30s were the era that sparked big changes in car culture across the country. Prohibition was a big one. That led to bootleggers modifying cars to outrun the cops, but the urge to go faster also pushed car culture forward in California. Car clubs were popping up left and right in SoCal, and to give these hot rodders an outlet, 11 clubs were invited to the dry lake beds in the Mojave Desert in 1937 to try and reach 100 miles an hour. That day, the Southern California Timing Association was formed, and they still run races in El Mirage today, along with another venue that you might have heard of in Utah, called the Bonneville Salt Flats. Those early days of trying to reach the absolute limit of what a car was capable of not only started organized land speed racing in the US, but also drag racing. The NHRA has its roots in those same events, and in 1950, the Santa Ana Drags became the first NHRA drag strip. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't thousands of other people across the country, or even the world, doing these exact same things, but California was the start of so many organized motorsports because of the population density. When you're working in a garage alone, you can achieve incredible things, but you're sort of doing it in a vacuum. When you're working in a shop next door to someone who's also working on their car, the first thing you want to do when they're both done is go out and see which one is faster.
Accidents are few, but no car is allowed to start unless the ambulance is standing by at the finish line.
After World War II, young veterans came home with a sense of invincibility and cash from the GI Bill burning a hole in their pockets. Many had mechanical knowledge too, from working on vehicles in the military and the desire to modify cars. Part of the GI Bill was a small weekly stipend that could last veterans a full year, and many took that as an opportunity to move to sunny California, start a small business, work in booming industries like aviation, or embark on a new career modifying cars. For some, the California climate was all they'd ever dreamed of. For others, well, they just got off the boat after fighting in the Pacific and set down roots within a few miles of the port. California was a major post-war hub for automotive and aeronautical industries. It also had lots of highly paid civilian jobs in construction and oil. In the late 1940s and 1950s, California's population grew by several million.
Los Angeles has grown from a sleepy pueblo to a vast, seething metropolitan city.
And all those people needed cars, especially after LA and other cities dismantled their streetcar and passenger train systems in favor of road expansions and freeways. That's right, California used to love cars so much it killed off what was once the world's largest light rail network. But that's a topic for another video. Coincidentally, this is also when the auto industry was going through huge post-war changes of its own. Rapid technological development, the concept of model year updates, and the start of America's horsepower wars changed cars forever. So even if you didn't want to build your own hot rod, Californians were flush with cash, surrounded by incredible roads, and wanted something faster than their neighbors. California's influence reverberated through automotive culture. Ferrari designed a cabriolet version of the 250 GT specifically to please its SoCal dealers and called it the California. Porsche went from an obscure German brand to an overnight icon after the 356 Speedster caught on with the Hollywood crowd. Mitsubishi, Ford, Mercedes, Hyundai, Toyota, and Mazda all had design studios in the LA area. And tracks like Willow Springs, Laguna Seca, Sears Point, and Riverside popped up one after the other, and that still wasn't enough to meet the demand. Luckily, California just so happens to have some of the best driving roads in the country. The way that canyons and cliffs create so many naturally beautiful roads can honestly not be overstated. You'll probably recognize quite a few of them from dozens of other YouTubers, but I think recently Ben and Ben from Gears and Gasoline summed it up best.
9 out of 10, that is our highest rated road so far.
Yeah, we both agree. You know, there's no contention here. We're making this representative because we don't have time to go to every canyon road in LA, but this is representative of the kind of driving you'll get on any number of roads out here, which is why people rate, you know, South California so highly for driving.
It's tempting to look at this post-war era as a golden age where everything was perfect before everything went to shit. But the truth is that California's love for cars was causing problems from the beginning. And as the state rose to prominence over those years, a dark cloud started gathering on the horizon. Literally. So by 1925, Los Angeles already had over 1 million residents. Basically all of modern-day Delaware was living in this one city that was quickly becoming a car-centric one. Now, every city back then dealt with the same growing pains with cars. Chaotic roads, clueless pedestrians, terrible brakes. But for LA, the biggest problem came from the tailpipe. Even as far back as 1903, air pollution in Los Angeles was so bad that residents mistook ultra-smoggy conditions for an eclipse. Smog so bad it blocks out the sun! In 1943, smog in Los Angeles got so bad that people literally thought it was a chemical attack. I mean, people were wearing gas masks just to walk to the shops. All the while, the number of cars in LA had doubled between 1920 and 1930, and then doubled again between 1940 and 1950. But the auto industry was growing everywhere, so why did LA become America's smog capital? The answer is geography, or topography. I never get those right. LA is a basin surrounded by mountains on 3 sides which block wind and trap pollution. Its climate makes it prone to inversions, where a cold air mass floats over a valley or a basin and prevents warm, polluted air from rising and dissipating. And it doesn't rain for months at a time. There were plenty of cities with dirty air in the mid-20th century, but only one with all of those factors and all of those people. This seems like a good time to mention that the same climate and topography that traps smog in the LA basin also amplifies wind in the hills, which just led to one of the worst disasters the region has ever faced. In January, after months without rain, incredibly strong Santa Ana winds blew through with 100-mile-an-hour gusts, starting and spreading multiple wildfires that burned into the city, destroyed over 12,000 buildings, and killed at least 28 people. It's been horrific, honestly. As much as we joke about California being overly environmentalist, it's because the consequences out here are very high. Fire doesn't care if your neighborhood is rich or poor, and when those winds are high enough, a spark anywhere in the area can turn into a massive disaster. So instead of an ad for tires or a discount code for meal plans, there's a link in the description to the donation page for the California Community Foundation. I personally have given them money, and I can vouch for what they do. We appreciate anything you can do to help the region recover. And with that, back to smog. Smog, specifically photochemical smog, is made up of many harmful compounds like hydrocarbons, but also, crucially, oxides of nitrogen, otherwise known as NOx. NOx results from incomplete combustion in an engine, and it alone is a health hazard. But when it's exposed to ultraviolet light from something like the sun, it gets energized and can break up into ground-level ozone. So Los Angeles has the perfect conditions for creating photochemical smog, and with the population density so high and the reliance on cars even higher, it wasn't long before the government just had to step in. In October of 1947, the LA County Board of Supervisors created the LA County Air Pollution Control District, the first program of its kind in the entire country. But you might be asking, why am I only talking about Los Angeles? Well, this is actually part of the problem. On a map, Los Angeles County is a tiny portion of California, about 2% by square mileage, in fact. But it's nearly 30% of the state's population. And the same thing happens again when you look at the state as a whole. California may only make up one star on the American flag, but it accounts for nearly 12% of the US population, or about 50% of the population west of the Rockies. This is why Los Angeles has had such a loud voice when it comes to emissions. They're the biggest part of the entire country. It's kind of like when you have a bunch of siblings and one is allergic to peanuts. Guess how many of you are getting PB&J sandwiches? None. And because of this, regulating emissions eventually wasn't just a Los Angeles thing. It became a California thing. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, was created in 1967. California's reliance on cars had become so heavy that it had the worst air quality in the country. To combat this, CARB and the EPA gave California the freedom to enact its own guidelines on one condition. They had to be stricter than the Clean Air Act guidelines set for the rest of the nation. And this is how the pendulum swung the other way. California's love of cars and driving them in beautiful scenery and great weather is part of the reason LA got so polluted in the first place. And the population density of LA is the reason carbon emissions regulations are so strict. The regulations have to be more rigorous the more people they affect. It's kind of like how every beach is a nude beach if nobody else is there. And because LA's smog can get bad enough to affect the rest of the state, this has to be a state-level issue. Which brings me to why this actually matters for you, who's probably watching this from outside California. A little over 15.6 million new cars were sold in the United States in 2023, and more than 11% were registered here in California. If automakers were to make something that didn't comply with CARB, they would be cutting off 11% of the domestic market. And it's actually bigger than that. Delaware, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and Colorado all now follow the same standards set by CARB for new vehicles. So even if your state doesn't have these strict regulations, every new vehicle is going to comply with them anyway.
He always wanted a Scat Pack. He lives in California, in LA. And so come to find out, Gulfgate Dodge actually sold him a car that he cannot register in California. This Scat Pack is literally the exact same Scat Pack that you would buy anywhere else, right? It's just that little bitty sticker under there that said it's not 50 states certified. Now, when you're talking about a dealer from Texas, oftentimes they won't pay the extra fee to go ahead and have it 50 states certified because they don't often sell cars out of state.
And the aftermarket isn't much different. For many intakes, exhausts, and chip tunes, you'll see products that are 49 state compliant. 3 guesses what that last state is. To make something CARB compliant is undoubtedly leaving performance on the table. But to make a non-compliant part, that just cuts off a big chunk of the market. And the ridiculous part is these products are often designed to be CARB compliant. They just haven't received approval from CARB yet. So if you see one later on that is truly 50 state compliant, it's most likely the exact same design. On the other hand, just because a part says race use only or not for road use doesn't mean it's always better. There are plenty of pipe benders out there who just make something that fits without ever testing it, for emissions or performance. Anyway, the snowball effect from one city's smog caused all of this. But this is what happens when anything gets oversaturated. It's like when Pokemon cards got banned in my elementary school. When it was just 4 kids playing tournament rules, none of the teachers cared. But all of a sudden the show comes out and everyone has binders in their backpack, and now it's a distraction. But there is a silver lining. If the strictness of emissions regulations originally stemmed from the air quality in Los Angeles, you'll be happy to know that LA air quality has actually steadily improved over time. That doesn't mean existing regs will be rolled back, but it does reframe the conversation somewhat for future proposals. Another upside is that gas-powered cars are running cleaner today than they ever have. Back in the day, internal combustion engines were around 20% thermal efficiency, meaning that there was more unburnt fuel turning into harmful emissions. Nowadays, ICE engines and road cars are starting to crack 40% thermal efficiency and higher. And that internal combustion ban, well, who knows how that'll play out. But it's worth remembering that CARB has tried mandating EV sales before in the 1990s, and it was forced to back down. It's a different era now, true, but it will also be a different era in 2035, and a lot can and will happen before then. But if California holds firm, as we've already said, major automakers aren't going to make cars that they can't sell to America's biggest markets. That could be the kill shot for the age of enthusiasts in California. But for now, man, I'm not going to stop enjoying what this place still has to offer people like us just because of what's on the horizon. If anything, now's the time to appreciate what we've got. I hope this explains a little bit about how California became the bane of automotive enthusiasts everywhere, and why, at its confused little core, it's still a state that loves cars. Let me know what you think in the comments, check out thedrive.com, and I'll catch you in 2 weeks with another story. Thanks for watching.